Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. This is Rappler Talk. The Fair Competition Act of 2014 successfully passed through the Philippine Senate. The House of Representatives approved the bill on its third reading. Now it's waiting for the signature of President Benigno Aquino. His cousin, Senator Bam Aquino, actually authored the bill. He says this is pro-poor, pro-people, and pro-business. What changes can we expect for the Philippine economy? How will this impact you and me, the Filipino consumers? Joining us today is the author of that bill, Senator Bam Aquino, the principal author. Thank you for coming to join us today.
Thank you for having me here, Maria, and it's good to be back.
So
here.
tell me, why was this bill so important?
Well, this is one of those bills that's been in the legislative mill for maybe over 2 decades already. We're one of the few countries left without a competition policy, and we see that in the consolidation of our economy. No? They say that there are only 40 families controlling the majority of our economy.
90%.
A lot of unfair trade practices where the big players do their best to edge out the smaller players or the new players or the startups. And this is just one of those laws that is pretty commonplace in the rest of the world, but this is the first time we're actually having a competition policy. So when we talk about competition, we're outlawing anti-competitive agreements, which can be seen in our cartels. So pag pupunta tayo sa palengke and we find the prices of onion and garlic skyrocketing, and we say, oh, that's because there are these traders who are controlling the market.
Right.
That's a cartel, no?
Right.
And they're basically manipulating our markets. And, you know, guess what? There isn't any specific law that outlaws that, no? So with this bill, it actually outlaws manipulation of prices in the market. It prohibits abuses of dominant position. So when you have a really large player telling a retailer, if you sell my competitor, I'm going to pull out from your business, no?
Yeah.
Or large players stopping new players from coming into the market. That's already prohibited now, no, with this law. And third is looking at mergers and acquisitions. If there are mergers and acquisitions which will eventually substantially restrict competition in the market, it may be disallowed. So this is it's a pretty major bill actually. No, it's the longest running bill in Congress right now. I would say it might be the most important bill of the 16th Congress, but it's one of those bills that unfortunately not a lot of people are really talking about. No, even if its potential to reform our economy or change our economy is quite huge.
What was the biggest hurdle to getting it passed?
Well, if you look at the law, it's quite difficult. No, it's not an easy law to digest or understand. It's pretty long. It's very technical. But again, it is one of those laws that a growing economy needs, a modernizing economy needs. No, so I think it was really being able to sift through the difficulties of the bill, comparing it to other jurisdictions, case law in the US and the EU, trying to see how that applies to us, making sure you have the right provisions in place. We tried our best to really pick the best parts of the different competition policies across the world. Of course, there were a lot of fears. There were some fears from the business sector that this might stop growth. But we were quick to say that if you're able to grow because of a good price and good quality, good for you. In fact, you know, good luck, and we hope you can even do better. But if you grow and you get market share because of abuses of other players or because of anti-competitive agreements, then that should be stopped. No?
So for many, many years, people say that the only way you can actually get business done in this country is to know the players, that the cartels, monopolies, these are standard fare. Some people will say that is the way of doing business here. Can this really change it?
Well, hopefully this will change it.
This is the first step.
This is the first step. And you know, Maria, kung wala namang kasing rules, hindi naman illegal yung ginagawa nila, di ba? So, to a certain extent, acts which are done here and probably are illegal in other countries, they were allowed, no? Because there wasn't any law, walang batas. So you can't also blame these companies from doing that because it wasn't hindi naman siya bawal.
Yes.
Di ba? But with this, we're saying these acts which limit competition, these acts which are unfair to other players, especially the smaller ones, these have to stop. And if we want to continue growing as an economy, if we want our economy felt by more people in the Philippines, we need to follow these rules, which are rules, again, in the rest of the world. No? I mean, earlier we were talking about the trade agreements we're in and we might enter. No?
Specifically, we have the ASEAN Economic Community,
the AEC, and probably the TPP.
TPP, yeah.
Okay. Can you imagine entering these larger markets without a competition policy? That's like, you know, kumbaga parang you're entering the big time without any rules. So obviously you're opening yourself up to abuse.
Yes.
So it's important that these policies are in place, no? And I always give the metaphor. When you're playing basketball, when you're in grade school or when you're young and you play basketball in your barangay, wala naman kayong referee, eh. Di ba? You don't have a referee. If I foul you, you're going to
Yeah.
call a foul, then I might agree. You might not agree. We might come to blows, or
Yeah.
maybe cooler heads will prevail. But once you enter varsity, once you enter UAAP, NCAA, once you get to the PBA, once you get to the NBA, you have referees, you have an association, you have someone to tell you, kapag 6 times ka gumawa ng foul, you're thrown out. You have 24 seconds to actually shoot the ball, or instead, it's a turnover, no? And that's where we are with the competition bill. Nung many years ago, probably, we could survive na tayo-tayo lang, kanya-kanya lang, walang mga rules in place.
Yes.
But as our economy was modernizing, and we have the highest growth now in the ASEAN, and yet
Yes.
we don't have a competition policy. It's just absurd that we want to improve our economy, we want to do better without these necessary rules in place. And again, if you look at competition, you look at the airline industry in the 90s, when it was just the Philippine Airlines, no?
Yeah.
The cost to travel to Davao in the 90s was more than 10,000 pesos.
Yes.
When Cebu Pacific came in, and now you have all these other airlines coming in, the prices started to go down. And yet, the price of gasoline went up through those years. No? So you imagine, how did those prices actually go down when the cost of things actually went up? It's because of competition. No? Or maybe when I was in high school, probably, you had a big, gigantic cell phone. And these were like yung ganito kalaking cellphone na Motorola.
I carried one of those.
You
Yeah,
carried one of those, right? How much did that cost? Only the millionaires, and probably if you're
CNN.
in media, CNN had that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but when Nokia started to come in,
Yes.
when Apple started to
Yep.
come in, Samsung started to come in, now you can go to any Tiangge, buy a smartphone for about 1,500 to 2,500 pesos.
Yeah.
And that will connect you to the rest of the world through the internet. Diba? That's because of competition.
Correct.
So we are...
Well, PLDT, the breakup of PLDT also.
Well, right
that
now,
hasn't-
no, you look at the telco industry, you
Yeah.
only have 2 large players.
Correct.
So if, and I'm always asked, no, because the internet is also one of our main advocacies.
Correct.
If we had more players in the telco industry, prices would go down.
So
no?
this is an interesting question, and shows you people are really looking at what you're talking about. At Mark Boney asks, how
Yes.
can you deal with rich players dominating telco, airlines, and power?
Well,
The three.
that's why
Very
we have
good,
a law.
at Mark Boney.
Okay,
Thank
that's why we have the law, no? And again, just to clarify, we're not penalizing people for size. We want people to grow. We want
Yep.
entities to grow. But you do it because of price and because of quality, not because you're the only ones there.
Yes.
So by creating an atmosphere or environment for competition, or making sure that other players aren't stopped because of unfair practices or abuses, you allow more players to come in, and inevitably, like all the markets in the world, no? If you have more players coming in, quality goes up, prices go down. And I
Right.
think we owe it to our people to have this type of competition in our country.
What about something like technology, something like Uber versus the taxis? How does that fall in something like this? Because Uber is a tech play for the same physical.
Well, we've supported Uber in the past, no?
Yeah.
I think we were one
Uber,
of the
Grab,
few,
Taxi. There were so
all
many.
of them,
there
no?
are a few of them.
We were one of the few politicians that actually came out to talk about them positively. But they do provide competition, and it's
Right.
good. It's good for our people that they have choices. Of course, you still have rules and regulations in place. No?
Yes.
So I think that's really the bone of contention for Ubers, whether they need a franchise or not. That's a whole other discussion, by the way, what needs franchises in the Philippines. We could go for another 2 hours to talking about what
Absolutely.
industries
Yeah,
need
of course.
franchises. Because personally, if you look at that list, some of them, you get to wonder, why do I need a franchise for this type of business or that type of business? No?
Correct.
But in any case, competition shakes up the market, and at the end of the day, it's really good for our consumers. And at the end of the day, yun naman yung hanap natin eh. Ano yung best for the Filipino people? And that's done when you're talking about a market situation, when there are players, and
Yep.
players are allowed to come in and enter. No?
So this is about to be signed. Then the devil is going to be how are you going to make sure it's implemented properly?
Exactly. And I think the first big step is really to see who will be appointed to the commission. Because just to clarify, the law creates the Philippine Competition Commission, and
Yeah.
that's the counterpart of that in the US is the Federal Trade Commission. No?
Right, right.
And we always see that. No? The
Huge.
Federal Trade Commission fines Apple hundreds of millions of dollars, or
A lot of
or
money
a lot
riding
of
on
money.
this. Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you remember the famous case of the EU fining Microsoft, no?
Yeah.
So in other countries, their competition commissions are very active. They are monitoring industries. They are making sure that consumers get the best for their money.
Yep.
No? So it's going to be the next battle, I think, is who will be appointed there. We need to make sure the chairman and the commissioners don't have any conflict of interest. They're people who have the capacity to rule on issues like this, because to be frank, Maria, it's not simple. No?
Yeah.
It's quite complicated.
Yeah.
And that they're people of integrity. that when this commission does make a ruling, excuse me, make a ruling, people will take note and industries follow. And if the acts there are being done in other industries, that other industries will follow suit and stop those acts already.
In terms of the power, so Mark Boney, thank you, asked the question about power. I mean, we have a law that's been passed. It appears as one of those things that need to be implemented, and yet questionable appointment to the ERC now, bringing up charges of potential conflicts of interest and collusion among the power players.
Yeah. Well, clearly, with the competition law, colluding among competitors is a criminal act already. No, because that's the cartel-like behavior. No, if it's proven that competitors are price fixing,
yes,
okay, that's like the main thing that the law outlaws.
Interesting. So, is this retroactive or just from the day?
From the day it's signed, because no laws are retroactive in nature, so we don't have that though. But if you're continuing the act, 2 years after the law is enacted, then you can be penalized. Now, for the first 2 years, Maria, there's a transition period, because we expect that the commission will start putting out industry analysis and saying, okay, in this industry, these things are now, illegal na yan or prohibited na yan, so you better change. And we allow companies to have a long time, which is 2 years, no, to be able to restructure, reformat, maybe even split up in some cases. But after that 2-year period is done, then the commission can start already penalizing.
So what will be covered?
All. No exemptions. Yeah. So we didn't exempt any, because other, if you do the research, no, in other countries, they carve out industries.
Correct.
They say, oh, bawal. We will not rule on this so-and-so industry or that so-and-so industry.
Yep.
The power of the commission is quite huge. It's quite wide, and we did not exempt any industries. There are exemptions, though, in certain cases, which we took from jurisprudence in other countries. But in terms of carving out sectors, there's none.
In terms of getting this passed, some of the sources have been saying that people tried to water down this bill.
Yeah.
Who were the ones who tried to water down the bill? What vested interest prevented this passage for the last 2 decades?
Siguro, let me clarify. No? In our first hearing for this bill, we told, it's a public hearing, no? So you have a lot of different groups who are interested. We said, okay, we will take all of your suggestions seriously, but you need to take our work seriously also. So come up with suggestions, come up with provisions, and we'll tackle it, no, as is. Now, we got suggestions from companies, from the academe, from NGOs, from different groups, and 90 to 95% of their suggestions were actually good.
Okay.
The main concern of the business sector, and this is actually still the concern of some people who are not for the bill, is that if the president is corrupt, if the commission is corrupt, this is a tool to harass business.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's, in fairness, no?
Yeah,
that's very valid.
Yes,
that's very valid
that
in our
is.
setting.
Yes.
So we did put in certain clarification. We even went as far as going through procedure,
yes,
because we wanted to make sure that that concern was addressed. Now, for example, there's a provision about predatory pricing. Selling below cost is prohibited.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's pretty normal throughout the rest of the world. But let's say, kunyari, in another country, for example, the US, there was a case that came out that you can sell below price in certain circumstances. Like, for example, if you're going out of business, it's okay. If the goods are expiring, it's okay. You know? So a lot of these different groups wanted to put that in. Can you at least state very clearly, what are these times when predatory pricing might be allowed? And this is the reason. They state case law in the US or in the EU.
Yeah.
So we allowed for that. That's why it took a really long time. And we feel that we addressed a lot of these valid concerns from the business sector. Not necessarily watering it down, but just making sure that the bill won't also be used to abuse business. No? But,
yes,
you know, every single provision was studied, every single word. Like, for example, and again, no, you always talk about when you're drafting law, every single word counts. No? So an and or an or, ang laking bagay kung and yan or yan. Or you have phrases like including but not limited to, which we excised because that creates so much uncertainty. Including this but not limited to that.
Yes,
so,
yes.
You know, every single provision, we really had to go through it. We had to exercise extra diligence, and in fairness to the Senate and the Congress panel, it took us 4 days and 30 hours, no? But I feel we were able to come up with a good bill.
But are you telling me that no vested interest actually tried to stop its passing?
No. In fairness, at least to me, no, because
so the oligarch, the people who have power, also want to see this happen?
Well, let me just say it this way, no. I made it clear that I'm pushing for this bill.
Okay.
So anyone who engaged with us, no one said, please don't pass this bill. Everyone was, oh, we have this case law.
Yeah.
Would you consider adding this in the provision? And again, 90% was okay. And in fact, I think it improved the bill.
Good.
There's about 5% which we felt were loopholes, no?
Yeah.
That if we weren't careful with the wording, it might defeat the bill.
Right.
So we were careful not to include that. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, no? Considering that it is the
It's their-
sector
yeah, of course.
that is affected.
Let me ask you, what practices that have been done in the past would now be illegal under this law?
Yeah. Cartel-like behavior. That's not
Example.
illegal. For
Yeah.
example, we're onion traders.
Yeah.
Oh, wag tayo maglabas ng sibuyas for the next few months so that prices will go up. When it goes up, bombahin natin with our supply.
So during a disaster, the government, for example, says...
It's not just during
yeah,
a disaster.
Right.
It happens, on a normal day, no?
Yeah.
So that's price fixing among competitors.
Yeah.
So competitors cannot agree on prices in the market because you're supposed to compete, no? And that's what we call cartel-like behavior. That is clearly illegal now, and you can face imprisonment because of that. Previously, they would probably file a smuggling case against these traders.
They would
no?
have... I see.
Or
I
they
see,
would
yeah.
file other things against them, or the current or the current bill, the current provision against that would be Article 186 in the revised Penal Code. Article 186 outlaws monopolies and combinations of trade. No one has ever been convicted of Article 186. No? It's one of those 80-year-old bills. No? But with this special law, it makes it clear that that is illegal, and you could go to prison because of that. Abuses of dominant position. Number one there is imposing barriers to entry. You're a dominant player. I am not allowing a new player to enter the market because of my control on retailers, because of my control on other aspects of
Distribution.
the market
Yeah,
distribution.
yeah.
If I'm actively stopping a new player from coming
Yes.
in, I am imposing a barrier to entry, and that could be net you a fine up to 250 million pesos. No? So
Which
there
industry?
are new things now which actually maybe in the past ginagawa lang, but ngayon people
They have
really
to
have to take
rethink
note
it.
because it could actually be illegal already.
Which industries would be most affected?
It's hard to say which industries right now, primarily because I don't want to speak ahead of the commission, no? Because the commission will still be formed. But if you look at industries, for example, where there are very few players, like the telco industry, that's probably an industry that the commission will probably give an analysis on why there are few players coming in.
Yes.
Not necessarily that they're doing anything wrong,
Yes.
but that industry needs more competition. And I think that's something I think that everyone can relate to and understand. No? You only have two players there.
Yes.
And a lot of economists will say you need at least three players to be an active market. Now, you look at all the other industries, you look at geographies also, Maria, because the bill does allow the commission to define a relevant market. So it's not just nationwide. You can say the market, the industry in Concepcion, Tarlac, which is my hometown, is controlled by one dominant player. So they can actually rule based on a geography.
Right.
So it's very powerful. The commission is very powerful. Now, aside from giving out the fines, which
Yes.
is what we usually hear about, or
Yes.
naririnig natin yan about other countries, no? Maraming fines na binibigay sa mga kumpanya. They can actually, as a remedy, also ask the company to stop. You can't do that anymore. That's not allowed anymore. You have to stop doing that. Or, in the case of mergers and acquisitions, they can actually ask the company not to push through with the merger. So again, it's a very powerful bill. The commission's quite powerful. And if implemented properly, again, that's the biggest caveat, if implemented properly, it does have a chance to actually improve our economy for the better.
So in terms of where we are today, what is the main impact a consumer would feel? Like
Yeah.
if there's one thing that you think.
Prices should go down. No? I mean, especially for those
That's a
industries
good thing.
which don't have any competition.
Yeah.
So you look at the cartels, and
Yep.
the cartels these days are quite active in the agricultural industry. So you look at, when you go to the palengke, pupunta kang palengke, bakit times 4 na tong presyo nito good na ito, di ba? Then that's probably because there's manipulation there. So that will be an immediate effect. No? That will be outlawed. Now, the longer term effects will be industry-wide because the commission
Right.
doesn't just rule on cases. They can actually analyze an industry and say, this industry does not have competition because of A, B, and C. And we recommend to Congress and the Senate to reform A, B, and C, or we recommend to this agency, A, B, and C is the reason why this particular industry does not have any competition. Not necessarily that the players are doing anything wrong,
Right.
but that because of the way things are, players aren't allowed to enter. So they do have that power, to actually analyze per industry.
Interesting.
And that's the first time we have that. Because all of the other regulators in the Philippines, except ERC, as you had mentioned earlier, they don't have a competition mandate. So this is the first time for most industries that a body has been created to look at their performance in terms of competition. First time yan.
Interesting. So let me switch hats, because I've been coming at it to open from that perspective of opening markets. But what about the other way? What if an industry does need some protection?
Yeah.
How do you not prevent the market from being gutted by more powerful foreign players?
Yeah. Well, one, there's a forbearance clause.
Yeah, I can't believe I asked that question, but anyway, go ahead.
There's a forbearance clause, which is that the new industry can actually request from the commission to give them a time-bound exemption. So you can request for that. And that's also common in other countries.
Do you see any industry like
for
that?
example, we've been supporting the game development industry in the Philippines. Very, very few players pa lang, all competing for contracts from AAA publishers.
Yes.
So they can actually, if they ask for forbearance, they can say, can we agree on what rates we will charge? That's price fixing, di ba?
Correct.
So we can agree na para none of us is undercut and our industry does grow.
Right.
Since we're super new anyway, we can ask the Competition Commission, please do not rule on competition with us because we're really new.
Okay.
So we're going to agree on what the prices are so that when we approach foreign companies for their business, we go as a group.
Yeah.
And of course, inevitably, you talk about what you charge, di ba?
Yeah.
So that could be an example of forbearance. Or even say in a geography, you look at farmers, for example, who want to agree on what price they will sell to the mill. Diba? So you have to allow certain exceptions talaga.
Okay.
I mean, it cannot be an outright blanket that everything is wrong. But the key there, Maria, is that the standard that the commission should use is that you substantially lessen, restrict, or prevent competition in the market.
Right.
So meaning,
Right.
kung konti pa lang kayo or you're just starting out, you're not going to affect the market greatly. You can be given that space.
Right.
And again, that's pretty common in other countries.
But
also.
again, you're not putting out nationalistic policies that are going to be protectionist in nature.
We didn't repeal any of those policies, no. So
Yeah,
for example,
so they're still there.
with taxation, it's still there.
Yeah.
A professor actually raised the concern about Walmart coming in, no.
Yeah.
And the restrictions on the retail business is still there. We didn't repeal that, no. So you can actually look at the competition policy side by side with these other laws or other restrictions that are currently there.
What
also.
about the impact of technology? I mean, we talked about Uber earlier, but for the telcos, for example, their competition are now no longer the telcos because 90% of their business has already been eaten up by OTTs who are actually doing telephone calls for free, right? For things like that, how do you look at things like that?
I wouldn't be able to talk about that probably in detail, no, because I'm not an expert on.
But in general,
that,
how
no?
do you things are changing so fast? So we're coming out with our competition. Fair Competition Act at a time when technology is really turning everything upside down.
Yeah, but Maria, we're not unique in that sense. No, all these policies have been done,
forever.
overdone. The cases have been there already.
Yep.
So the commission will probably look at all of these other countries who have ruled on this already. For example, the issue on Apple by the FTC was on the pricing of their ebooks. No, so again, that's like technology.
Correct.
You now have a platform to distribute books super rapidly, diba?
Yeah.
But the FTC was still able to rule on that, no? And to say that, by talking to by fixing the price, there's a issue of competition there. So it can be done. I mean, I don't think technology will necessarily make all these competition policies outdated, no, or obsolete. In fact, I think it can actually go hand in hand, no?
Right.
That even with technology improving, you'll be able to bring in these new players, these disruptive players in, because they won't be stopped from entering the market.
You've passed 5 laws in 2 years through Congress. 5 laws in 2 years. That's a good track record.
So
one of the other one is interesting to me, the amendments to the cabotage
policy.
policy.
Yeah, there's no cabotage law, by the way. It's a policy.
Yeah. Sorry, I keep calling it the cabotage law because according to that, when I was looking at that, it meant that goods coming from outside the Philippines are actually cheaper than goods trying to come from Davao, say, to Manila.
Yes.
So what is this amendment, and why did you choose
So
this?
again, one of the bigger issues with our domestic trade is that the cost of logistics is extremely high.
Yeah.
And of course, people say, oh, because we're 7,000 islands, then that's why it's expensive. But if you look at the cost of things, to send a particular good to Cagayan de Oro, it's cheaper to send it to Hong Kong first or Kaohsiung first, and then Manila, Kaohsiung, Kaohsiung, Cagayan de Oro, then Manila, Cagayan de Oro directly. So then there's really a problem there, no?
Because that is also, in a way, that's unfair competition. I mean, that's protecting a monopoly of some sort, right?
But it's constitutionally protected, no? Because it's in our constitution that
Right.
certain industries need to be protected or need to have a nationalistic character, no? So what we did was we went as far as we could go to opening up our shipping without necessarily going up against the constitution. So what we did is that we opened up our multiple ports to foreign ships. So foreign ships can now dock in multiple ports. They can co-load as long as the products are imported goods or goods to be exported. So at least for those sets of cargo, you can expect that hopefully prices will be cheaper, and that will affect our prices now.
What, these 5 laws, what things carried you through? What were you looking for? What was important about them?
Well, all of these laws are in my committees. So they're either youth-related laws, which would be the Youth Entrepreneurship Act, for example, or trade-related, which would be our Go Negosyo
Go Negosyo,
law,
this
our
one. The Go Negosyo was also
competition and
good.
cabotage. No? So more or less, maybe for the benefit of our viewers, as a senator, you have a committee,
Yeah.
and you more or less have some level of control with your committee, what you can put out as a committee report, what you bring to the plenary. So our opportunities are really more in these 2 committees to be able to bring out important laws.
These are great. The cabotage policy is...
Oh, mas matanda pa yan sa akin.
I know. We've been looking at that for a very long time, and it doesn't make sense. And so you talked about how the Constitution protected these things. Are those still relevant today?
Well, it's up for discussion. A lot of people want to discuss opening up our economy further. It's probably something the next president will have to raise. No, I don't think it's really tenable now. Now that there's about a year left, no. But whoever the next president is, maybe that can be first on their agenda. People have been calling for federalism, opening up our economy. Personally, although this might be unpopular, is to extend the length of local government units, the terms,
Yeah.
because 3 years is just too short for any development period. No? So, there are a lot of suggestions on how to improve our constitution. I think it would be a plus if the next president does call for a constitutional, constitutional change or a constitutional constitutional convention or even a constituent assembly in their first year.
Fantastic. We're at the end of our time. Your last thoughts, how well positioned is the Philippines now to take advantage of a global economy?
Well, we have the highest economy in
Now.
ASEAN now.
Yes, we do.
We do have the second highest economy in Asia.
Up until 2016, when
Okay.
elections can actually turn everything upside down.
Well,
Yeah, okay.
I'm a little more optimistic, Maria.
Okay.
I think our economy, our business sector has learned to save itself from the shock of politics. No?
Okay.
I don't think
Really?
the changes will be that dramatic.
Okay.
And this is just my personal point of view. I think we've learned how to let our economy run. No? Of course, if your president is not corrupt, if they have a good head for poverty alleviation and a good head for sound economic policy, it will make things much easier for us. But we're 4 years, good economy.
Yeah.
Generally, GDP. Maybe another 6 years, 6 to 10 years of that growth, we will find ourselves in a middle income status. Hard for people to accept, but it could happen. Now, as we're entering that stage, we need to look at what are the policies that we need to push so that when we enter that stage, we're poised for it. No?
Yep.
Competition policy is
Yes.
one. Making sure that opportunities get to our poorest Filipinos, that's another one. That's our Go Negosyo law. Looking at how to get more FDI so that we can have more jobs. So these
Yes.
are all foundations so that in those next 6 to 10 years, eventually we wake up one day and we're a middle income economy status. There's much less poverty in the Philippines. It can be done. But you need to have those steps. You need to have these building blocks in place. And probably this is the best time to do that. Rather than hinahabol na naman natin, pag nandyan na, we might as well do it now and
Yes.
really support that growth.
Fantastic. Well, I hope it comes sooner rather than later. We've been talking to Senator Bam Aquino about the Fair Competition Bill and its impact on the Philippine economy. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining us, Bam. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for watching. Okay, can I tell you one thing?
Yes.